Hello? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we
All
do.
right. Good to meet you
Good.
guys. Sorry about being late. Thanks
Good,
for
you too.
sending that
Totally
link.
Oh
fine.
no, it's okay. I'm sorry the first part didn't work.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I was making my way in, but I got the link, so that was a little bit quicker. I was waiting for it to upload. I think I had to download the app into the computer or something, but
It's okay. Don't worry.
yeah. We'll start out. Let's do an introduction just so I know who we're talking to and stuff. But you guys know a little bit about me, and if you read Res Life, you know you kind of know a lot about me. So I like how Dave when we did that interview, it was pretty extensive, and I've known Dave for quite a while, and yeah, I think I'm this like it's like a 16th cousin if it is if you can even count that, but know his family and his deceased mother and father and his brother and stuff, and know them all pretty good and things. But he was working on that, so he interviewed on me on that, and then I was working at the PD at the time, still in law enforcement, and then I since then retired and started teaching at Ojibwe at Cass Lake. But I don't know what else to add much to that. That's but just that if you read that, that's it was pretty personal and. Pretty deep. I was a little. I felt kind of uncomfortable, like with that much information going out. But I think at the same time, it tells a good story.
Yeah.
It's realistic. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So who are you guys?
So I'm Ethan. I'm the one that emailed you, of course.
Okay.
I'm Zach. I also read Res Life with Ethan. We did it in class in school.
Nice.
I'm Evan, and I'm a friend of Ethan's, and I was interested in doing this podcast. And I'm also trying to get more into Native American culture, learning more about it.
Oh, cool.
I'm Damien, and I'm a friend of Ethan and Evan's. And Evan introduced me to the podcast and said, "Would I like to join?" I said, "Sure." And I researched more on you. I was like, "This guy's pretty interesting."
All right. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, it's good meeting you guys. No school today, so I think it worked out great. So otherwise, I probably would have been busy teaching and stuff. So, what do you guys wanna know about me?
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we start, on everyone's behalf, I just want to say thanks so much for meeting with us here. Like, yeah, we understand that you're busy, and we're very thankful that you take time to teach us something.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's kind of cool that you felt good to get your email that you guys are, that even that the book is doing what it intended to do also. So I hope it gave a glimpse into that, because I think Native American history even up till now, even though it's unseen, is still a big part of the United States, especially the formation and evolution of the United States, so.
Definitely. So yeah, we talked a minute ago about not having school today because of the holiday. On that note, are there any holidays or traditions in Ojibwe culture that you feel don't get enough recognition and you'd like to tell us some more about?
Yeah. So, I'll basically be speaking from the Ojibwe perspective. I'm Ojibwe. Yeah, I'm half. My dad is Roger Grolla. He was a German Italian, and then my mom Cheryl Lisi, and she was a daughter of Fred Lisi and Ogimaagiizhig, both full-blooded Ojibwe. Fred was from the White Earth Reservation. My grandpa and my grandma's from Boys Ford Reservation, where I'm enrolled at, and I grew up and I was raised on the Red Lake Reservation. But in regards to holidays, that is a good one, because one that isn't celebrated lately, and the tribal government, the full sovereignty, so they can change things around. But they actually combined President's Day with and they make it Chiefs Day, in honor of all the chiefs that signed some of the treaties, 1889, 1863, and some of those treaties like that. And a lot of when Red Lake does something, a lot of the other reservations will follow suit. So it's kind of in Red Lake, it's recognized as Chiefs Day. And And the other one that doesn't get recognized, that you know how we just got done celebrating the new year,
Yeah.
January 1st, the new year. So anyway, in Ojibwe custom, sugar bush is the marker of the new year. So Ojibwe society is a little bit different, like even with counting days, like we say 3 days until this or that. So anyway, with days, Ojibwe counted them as nights, like how many nights till something, and then the moon is Ogimaagiizhig, so it's kind of like a counting phase. So some of the things are a little bit different than mainstream society. So it's more of the way you think. So anyway, in the spring, at the Ojibwe New Year is the mark of the sugar bush. So when the sugar bush is done, and that's where you harvest maple syrup. I don't know if you guys already know what sugar bush is. So you tap maple trees, you get the liquid from them, you boil it down into syrup or sugar. And it was a mainstay of the Ojibwe people, and there's some legends that go with it. The maple tree is highly associated with what they call Sasquatch or Bigfoot. He's the one who was given, who gave us the sugar bush. So he's highly respected for that. And even with Bigfoot, or we'll call him Bigfoot, in Ojibwe we call him Masabe, but he's like a big brother to the human race. So he's this entity that he's only seen if he wants to be seen. But throughout human history, he's been there for several things. One of them was the gifting of the sugar bush. And the saying is that Ojibwe would not be wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, the sugar bush, the maple trees. And that's one of the things that bothers me is like that there's commercials about Bigfoot, the jerky one where he's kind of demonized, when in Ojibwe society, he's this deity that's highly respected, and there's nothing bad about him. He loves us, he's not out to kill us or get us or anything, but so that I really think like sugar bush should be like a new year. So Ojibwe kind of in the hindsight of things, the shadow of everything else, there's no official holiday, but it's kind of a respected time where it usually happens on weekends, but families will have feasts, and stuff for the Ojibwe New Year. So that's one holiday that I kind of wish, would be, that, you got a day off for instead of January 1st, The other one is the ricing season when wild rice is done. So, I don't know if he covered it in his book, in Treuer's book, but wild rice is kind of the Ojibwe migrated from the East Coast to where we are now. The Ojibwe Nation, is kind of cut in half with the Canadian border, and then the Ojibwe are present and occupying 5 states. So it's a pretty big nation, Ojibwe Nation, and then the wild rice is like kind of a prophecy thing. It's a thing of healing and sign of good life and things like that. So the rice crop in the fall is actually like another, not necessarily a holiday, but it kind of is, where even in the fall with my students at school, where I'll have a handful where their families still take the ricing season really serious. So it's kind of common to have a student miss a week or so of the first week of school because they're ricing, and then you got these big elaborate celebrations for the rice when it's done, because that's kind of what sees you through the winter, right? The sugar bush. So that's the other one that's, it's not a holiday, but I kind of wish there was a marking for it. So in Ojibwe society, you kind of know those two things. So, but most Ojibwe do celebrate other things. And, like even today with Martin Luther King Day, where, the human rights and some of these, all this stuff kind of gave way to put more more attention on Native issues, as the civil rights things happened in the 60s. And, I wasn't born till 70 and stuff, but so there's a lot with that. So it's kind of cool that we're meeting on that. And I think it involves all of us as a country as a whole, Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah. I have one. And what is your favorite like Ojibwe story or like legend that has been passed down? Like, I think you really like the Bigfoot one, but do you have one that you like more?
Yeah, there is one. So there's this there's one that, well, there's several, there's lots of them. We're actually in the storytelling season, so it kind of matters kind of like what mood I'm in, or what the context of the or what people are, what the mood is of the people at the time, in the family at home, or whatever, what the stories we tell or something. But there's one that's been passed down in my family, and this one really impacted me because I thought about it since I was a little kid. And so I gotta rewind a little bit, and so this story is been passed down in my family for for a couple hundred years. And it's the first meeting of Europeans that happened on the East Coast among the Ojibwe. And so with my grandma, this is what I got to kind of back up and say. With my grandma that I heard this from, when I was you guys' age, she was in her late 80s. And so that was like mid, the she was born 1901, but she was in her late 80s when I was your guys' age. So that, had to been mid 1980s maybe. I'm around there. Late, 1980s. I'm trying to think of the exact year, but I don't remember. But anyway, so she was raised by her grandma, who lived to be 108, had a Ojibwe name only. And so they actually have a family story of the first non-native, non-Ojibwe family that settled near Red Lake before there was a reservation or anything even. Just so you get the story has been passed down, for this long, and how old it is. But anyway, so there was this Ojibwe village, and the way I was told is that one of our relatives was there and had seen this happen, and it was what happened was this huge ship one day. They camped. They had a village near the ocean, but a huge ship showed up, this big boat, and they didn't know what it was and stuff. And some people came ashore. The smaller boat came ashore, and it had was carrying a light-skinned race, and it was prophesized that they were going to show up at some point. It's in the prophecy with the wild rice and stuff. So anyway, when they would show up, everybody would scatter. Everybody would take off and hide and everything. They didn't make any contact. And this happened several times. And the Ojibwe had these, we use a lot of birch bark for birch bark baskets and stuff. But anyway, they carved bowls also out of not only basswood but ash trees. And I actually keep some around the house also because of the story with that. So they had all these wooden bowls that they used for berries and different things that were sitting around the village. So one of the times that the ship came in, these people came in, they brought wine with them, and they put it in these different bowls in the village, and then they went back out to the ship. So the Ojibwe came back into the village, and they had these bowls with this. At first, they said it was kind of a smelly liquid in it, and so they consulted the village medicine man, and he did ceremony and actually, and said this wasn't a good thing. This was something bad, and they should leave it alone and not touch it. That it's this really bad substance. Leave it alone and don't touch it. So anyway, I guess time went by, like a lot of time went by. So I don't know how long that was, but some time went by. And there was kind of a guy that was a little mischievous in the village, and he kept messing with this liquid, and I guess he dipped his finger in, and he kept bothering it and stuff, and nothing would happen. So anyway, he took some, and I guess he smelt it, and then he tasted it, and it kind of like soured his face and stuff, but he kind of kept on, and finally he drank it. He drank the whole thing, and he became intoxicated. And then there was a few others that drank the bowls also, and so once they became intoxicated is when they came in for the last time, and that was their first contact with Europeans from the ship. So I was told this story. So what I got from it was that this was alcohol was a very, very destructive thing that I'd already known and already seen in communities. You know what I mean? I don't think it only affects natives also, but just that story. It's kind of what I like about it is it's unique to my family. I'm the only one that kind of tells that story. You know, I think other family members know about it, but they don't tell it. And the lesson in there is like with me, it impacted me where I've never drank. You know, so that's one of the things with that one. So that's kind of my favorite one, and I really like how it's been passed down orally through, you know, for you know, hundreds of years. So that's one of my good ones. And then there's lots of others. There's different ones about birds and animals and stuff, you know. And so it's hard to say one's favorite, but I think that one has impacted and been meaningful to my life personally. That story. So
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
really interesting. It's cool to hear it from a native perspective instead of just the typical European one.
yeah.
History book.
Yeah.
All right, I actually have a question about like the story that you just told. You said that it was prophesized that the Europeans would land ashore. Would this prophesize be like meaning trying to figure out the words, but like that the Europeans were going to wind up leading to destruction of like the land and stuff, or just prophesized as like they would land ashore and then just things would go bad from there?
Yeah. So that's this is a great question. I'm really kind of glad you asked this, because I kind of take on a different I think of it differently, because you know, a lot of native communities are not in good shape right now. You know, there's a lot of good natives out there, but there is a lot of, you know, me being in law enforcement, I've seen the dark side of the drug epidemics and everything that's, you know, not only Indian communities, but ripping through a lot of, you know, minority communities and you know, non-minority communities also are highly impacted. But in that prophecy, because I've often thought about this, where, you know, it's been a lot of destruction since the introduction of alcohol and some of these things, and even loss of land, loss of, you know, in the you know, like now the graves, like the, you know, the boarding school graves are popping up and turning into really, you know, all children's lives matter, you know, type stuff. And it's very valid. I mean, I kind of with me, like there's actually a area in Red Lake, and there's 43 children's graves there. And that's what kind of bothered me when they're popping up and they're gaining all this attention, is kind of like they're I mean, a lot of people knew they were there already. It's not like they were just discovered, you know. It's finally just getting attention. But with the prophecy, like I don't think it's necessarily they're pointing out bad. I think that, you know, that in the prophecy it points out that it's going to be change. And one thing that really hits me now is, especially being a teacher and seeing what I've seen in my own life, that this change is like happening ever faster. Like the deterioration of language and culture is, you know, upon us. Like I really believe that, I really believe that the, you know, we're at a make or break time right now, where if, you know, if like I tell my students, if they don't grasp this language and practice some of the culture stuff, then it's going to be gone like within a generation or two, you know. You know, and I think that's what that prophecy warned about it. And I think that's why they kind of left, because some of the villages that remained in New York and, you know, Connecticut, some of these places, that way, like they are, not only the blood is diluted, but their cultural stuff has been really really lost. You know what I mean? So there was a big change in it. And I think even though Ojibwe is as traditional as my reservation and community was, like you know, once there was the introduction of, you know, firearms and all that stuff, like even though Ojibwe people have been I believe have been kind of in a state of chaos since first contact. Like even the chieftainship, like right now, like when you talk about a chief, you know, a chief that lived even 250 years ago, these well-noted ones like Ogimaagiizhig, Ogimaagiizhig, they're all war chiefs, you know. So ever since the arrival, there's been in a constant state of warfare. And even now that there's not a military standing, you can say our communities are at war with drugs and alcohol, you know, and cultural loss and language loss, you know. So I think in that prophecy it pointed that out. I don't think it was saying that there was going to be, that Europeans were bad. It was just saying that there was going to be change, you know what I mean, and evolution. And that's one part I gotta, you know, and the other part I gotta kind of back this up with is, like remember I was telling you my grandma taught, like we got a family story of the first European family that they grew up or that moved like next to right off the west side. And what she talked about is that, you know, Europeans, we're talking about my grandma's time, you know, the one that lived to be 108, but when she was young, that you would hear that there was Europeans, that there was this light-skinned race, but you didn't see them too often. Like she'd never seen them too often. And she talked about the first time she had seen them and they were on a wagon. And they spoke multiple languages, you know, so I think there was like different types of Europeans coming through, you know. But anyway, she talks about a year where it went from you would see one once in a while or see a family, and then all of a sudden it was just like a big boom. All of a sudden, she said, like Bemidji, Minnesota, like just quadrupled in size, you know, and there was more and more people. But anyway, there were some families and they were Norwegians, were right off the reservation area from where my grandma and them grew up on the west side. And those first stories, so when they lived by each other, they actually got along really well. And there's evidence that some of these families, you know, we do our fall and spring water ceremonies, we do our bear smoke. But anyway, the families that came into Ojibwe territory actually participated in games and ceremonies and did the same things that Ojibwe did. And the first house that my grandma lived in, you know, she was born in a wigwam, and then they had a house, and the first log, there was a little log house, but the first house they had in is the Norwegians that lived by there, they all helped each other out. Like they all picked berries together, and one of them got a saw, like a sawmill, and they all made each other houses. So everybody, the whole community, you know, Indian and white, helped each other make all these cabins, and it was the first house that my grandma had lived in, and the remnants of it is still standing out in that area also. I want to stop out there and get a picture sometime because I talk about this so much. But that's one of the things I think about is, you know, there is still an assault on language and culture and in natives' sovereignty, but at the same time, there was a time when we all got along and there was no divide between everybody, you know. So that's what I kind of like, and I really like that you guys like pulled this together also, because I think it's things like this that spawn that, bringing it back to that cooperative state of everybody can be themselves, you know, and get along at the same time, you know. So, and I think it's really important, especially times like now when, you know, you got especially with the boarding school stuff popping up, you know, it just fuels a lot of, you know, like it's like, you know, picking a scab off of a sore, you know, there's a lot going on and stuff. So, but yeah, that was a good question. I hope I answered that all right.
Hey,
All right. I heard how you mentioned like Native American culture is deteriorating very fast, which it is, and it's a really big problem. And I was wondering, like, what can regular people like us do to help preserve Native American culture and bring it back?
I think you're doing it right now by like when you called this Zoom meeting and reached out to me, which was, I think it's great that you guys are doing this. And this is the thing is learning a little bit and acknowledging that it's there. You know, I think you guys did the first step in doing that and in understanding each other. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you know, just that they exist. And you know, one of the things too is, you know, the other thing I think that really helps is, you know, we're still in that kind of state of, you know, Western shows where there's still anytime you turn on a John Wayne show, it's kind of nothing for a lot of Indians that get killed, 10, 15 warriors get killed, no big deal. But a cowboy gets killed, all of a sudden justice needs to be served. There's an elaborate funeral. And I think that is what spawns some of the other stuff, like even the mascots, like Redskins and, some of that stuff. It's hard to, because some of the stuff I think it's kind of cool that natives at least get a little bit of something, but at the same time, if it's okay to say that stuff, it goes into the thinking. So what else is okay? So I think engaging those things, like you guys are questioning some of the stuff, you read the story and actually reached out, you guys are the ones that are going to lead this. I think this is really, really cool. I think Dave would be proud of you guys. If I don't see him often, but when I do, I'm probably going to tell him I met with you guys and stuff, and that it spawned this. But I think just having these talks and then acknowledging that that's there, and even even just honoring some of the stuff, like even Chicago, it's an Ojibwe name. It's like there must have been a lot of those skunk plants down there or whatever.
Onions, I think it was.
Yeah, they're like a Shigag. Shigag means skunk in Ojibwe, so it's with those little onion type things. I don't think there's any up this way, so I think they're only down that way, but just kind of honoring those and recognizing that those things are. And I actually point some of that stuff out, like with Chicago, Milwaukee, Mississippi, all these all of them are derived from Ojibwe names, and it kind of shows that what was the dominant language not that long ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of honoring that and stuff. And I think those are the first steps to do that, and to have these talks and just acknowledge those, that they exist. And then, don't use the, like I was talking about the Redskins and stuff like that, like don't participate in any more deterioration of anything, and giving it that respect and stuff, and I think, just reaching out, and I think people on both sides can do the same thing. I think some natives have had such bad experiences that's all they talk about, even the first Thanksgiving, and there's just so many different things, and it's kind of hard to pull that apart or even talk about it when it causes ill feelings on both sides. So it's but things like this, I think, are the first step in healing that and acknowledging that. So it's proud of you guys, man. That's pretty cool. I still can't get over it, man, that it's you guys called this meeting and asking these cool questions. You guys are sophomores?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That is so cool. Usually the sophomores I know are usually still in the games, and
I really liked how you just talked about like the Redskins and just how like we can't all focus on one point of view. I just think that's so important, how we have to look at it both ways. I really like that.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, and I think that's the start. And I think that I often ask the question of, like, not only my non-native colleagues and my native colleagues, like, in my grandma's time, like, they all helped each other. We all helped each other survive the winter. And even our ceremonies and games included non-native people. And then with all of that, how did we get to where we're at? What I mean? We can suspect some of the things, politics, boarding school, different political things, and just even the times. I think right soon after the fur trade, Ojibwe went from being a superpower, regional superpower that actually, helped the evolution of the United States, to one that in the state of that it is now, they became poverty stricken, So it's I think there was a lot of change there, but I think if we were there once, we can get there again, And I think just to do that, it needs to be talks like this. So it's pretty cool, because you guys are just, sophomores, and it's like, it's hard to have these discussions at my own school with non-native staff,
Yes, thank you. We're happy that what we're doing is making a difference. I forgot to mention it earlier. This meeting's being recorded.
Yeah, I seen that start.
Do we have your permission to share this?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, if we catch any flack on either side, we'll deal with it. All right, but I'm pretty proud of you guys, man. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
yeah, that'd be good. And I don't know if I'll ever get down that way, but we should all stay in contact or something. And if I can help out anymore or anything like that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a question. Now you brought up in like TV shows, like 15 Native Americans can die and no second thought about it, and one cowboy dies, elaborate funeral. Do you think like most cowboy TV shows are more like Eurocentric because it only talks about how the cowboys are the good guys and the Native Americans are the bad guys because they're trying to take back their land?
Yeah, and that's what and it's and I think westerns are that because when you think of it, it's kind of the American ideal, you kind of come in and carve out your own and stuff, it's kind of what we're on, and and lots of natives too, this is the thing, it's not like every native doesn't like them, but I got relatives that love John Wayne shows, and it just kind of gets me because it's the whole thing behind it of that. It just bothers me because I think it, even in our MMIW stuff, and I don't like using MMIW, the murdered and missing Indigenous women, because I had a student go missing and on Halloween night, and he's still missing. It's been 3 years.
Wow.
And so I call it, the MMIP, murdered and missing Indigenous people, because it's men and women, and he was a male student of mine. But research shows and things show that, even me being in law enforcement, I know the particulars of the different jurisdictional differences, especially in Indian country. So what it kind of shows is that investigations are, these investigations, when it comes to not native peoples, it kind of falls through the cracks because there's all these different jurisdictional differences. So it's hard it's not just one jurisdiction investigating it. You know what I mean? So you got all these different things. Plus you got a lot of the drug epidemics and waves of drug epidemics happening and stuff, so there's a lot of bad, but it, that I think is also what kind of, it sets that mindset with that. So that's what doesn't sit good with me, in knowing some of this stuff, that it's, if one human life is not expendable, to violence or anything, yeah, so that's my kind of my theory on that. I don't have a lot of research to back that up or anything, but it's when it comes to those, that's what kind of bothers me. And then even when I was a little child, I was in a lot of foster homes, but I remember watching, and this is where I kind of got there, when was, some of there was one home I stayed in and we could only watch Gunsmoke. And it was only one of the shows, but I remember always wanting to be the cowboy and not the native, just because all the stuff that happens, and the stereotypical stuff, there's the reservation also, the community is also in is a high poverty area, so like a lot of drivers might not have insurance or a license, and even the neighboring county, I've had officers say, like, if you stop a reservation plate, more than likely there's no insurance. There's a good chance the driver won't have a license, or anybody in the car. So it's you can see that, but at the same time, it's racial profiling, and I think it's the bigger thing is why don't they have these things? Why can't they fairly acquire these like anybody else? You know what I mean? So yeah. It's a good topic, but I use that Western thing, and don't take it wrong, because there's lots of natives that love those. They watch Westerns all the time, so, but yeah, good question, man. You guys got some, this is like a college class.
Thanks. Yeah, on the topic, kind of poor conditions, what do you think could be done to improve reservations in native communities? And also, what do you think about reservations being exploited for profit? Because my uncle has a place up in northern Wisconsin, and to get there, we have to drive through the Lac du Flambeau reservation each time. And as soon as you enter, it's just the feeling is weird. Like I've seen kids without shoes or shirts walking around,
Yeah.
but there's also a giant casino called Lake of the Torches
Yeah.
in the middle of it.
Yeah. So that part there is, it's kind of hard because the gaming part is you know, like a lot of people think like Mystic Lake, you know, made their small band of members millionaires, you know. But the other ones, like I think Lac du Flambeau and a lot of the northern ones where I'm at, the even if the profits were up a little bit from casino, I don't think they would ever see a payment. You know, that it goes into some of the programs that are not funded by federal things and stuff. But with that, what my personal thought is, like, you know, a lot of Ojibwe, when things were getting hashed up in treaty era, like remember when I said that they, after the fur trade, they kind of went into adjunct poverty, right?
Yeah.
So I think when some of that stuff was going on, like, you know, from what I heard is like even some of these areas, like there's a lot of villages that are way out in remote areas and stuff, you know, and I think they were kind of going for their life, you know. They were kind of not wanting to be, they were wanting to be isolated and things, you know, and lost you know, really good areas of land to treaties, you know, and stuff, and were kind of forced into them. So that I think that poverty, I think just kind of, you know, it's one of those things. But the economic thing for reservations to come out of it, you know, I don't think there's any one quick, or I don't even, you know, it's hard to answer because there's you know, the logging kind of boom went, you know, that was kind of a high point for a while. Fur trade, you know, things kind of ebb and flow. And you know, right now, even with gaming's not the answer. You know, it's not, it's a little drop in the bucket. I don't think it's, you know, a whole lot and stuff, you know. But it's a big thing. I think, you know, reservation leaders, you know, even, you know, federal leaders, state leaders, people are, you know, constantly trying to find ways to help with that. You know what I mean? It's hard too, because I come from a different, you know, you know, being in law enforcement, I see things, I've seen the bad side of things more than I've seen the good, you know. And I try to be careful even when we talk about these issues, because it's, you know, I've only seen one side, so I don't want to come off as point all these negative things out, when Ojibwe people have a beautiful culture. I mean, not all Ojibwe are drug addicts or drank, or, you know, there's plenty of them that don't. And the culture is really rich. Some of the family systems, I mean, you know, if you ever spend time in some of the communities, I mean, they'll be some of the nicest, smartest people you've ever known, you know. You know, so it's kind of that thing, you know, it's kind of what you're looking for too. You know, there's an ugly side to it, but there's also a good side that's perseverance, and things are, you know, the deterioration of language, but there are still families that are using the language. You know, there are still good things going on, you know. And yeah, it's hard because some of the, you know, I mean, I've lived on a res, like I went into policing because there was nothing else to do. You know, I was good at, you know, when I thought the casinos had just came up, like that's where I worked at the casino 2 years out of high school, and I kind of didn't know what to do. But when I, you know, looked at the things within myself, like I was good at staying out of trouble. You know, I had a lot of cousins and friends that were getting into drugs and drinking, were getting locked up already. And one of the things I was good at was staying out of trouble. And then they, under one of the administration, I think, I don't know if it was Clinton or one of them, but they had they put more budget in for police officers. And so they're hiring 6 police officers. So that's the path I took. And I kind of went into it because there was nothing else to do. I couldn't afford to go to college at the time. You know, I later after that, I did get my degree, got my master's also. And then I'm, you know, working on my doctorate right now, you know, when we get done with this, I actually got to log on and do some assignments and stuff. But yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that'd be a good one for Dave or his brother Tony. With some of the stuff we're talking about too, I don't know if you've seen the book Ojibwe in Minnesota by Anton Treuer, Dave's brother. I use that one in class, especially with the history part to some of the stuff we're talking about. but it talks about some of that stuff specifically in there as it, you know, as it pertains to the Ojibwe people, you know. Yeah, good question. Very engaging there, Ethan.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a hard one to talk about, you know, both sides too. It's kind of, if you know, that's the thing. If we could come up with the answer, I think we'd all be famous right here. You know?
All right, so
Yeah, so oh, go ahead, Ethan.
all right.
Oh, David.
I have a question because you said that you were talking about how like the beginning of why you became a police officer. How you saw like the bad side of how the drug trade affected minority and non-minority cultures. Would you want to share any of those stories if you would want to?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of any right offhand. If you know, if I start going in my law enforcement career, we'll be here all afternoon. But yeah, I mean, I talk about some of those. Like what specifically again?
Just any stories. It doesn't really matter. It could pertain to like the drug trade, like you said, or just.
Well, yeah. So I guess the overall view. So like one thing that kind of gets me is because the later in my career there, the like one of the, so Indian country has kind of been affected by these waves. First it was alcohol, and then it was, and there's some evidence in some of the treaties that is part of some of the treaties they would actually send, you know, alcohol laced with opium into the camps before they would meet with it's documented, and I can't remember, there's one book that outlines this process. So it was, you know, it was creating it was making some of the first addicts, you know, even among the Ojibwe chiefs, like the first Ogimaagiizhig the first was affected by that and some of those things. But so it's been wave after wave, and one of the things that got me was that because you know, it was the crack epidemic like hit hard, and it like overnight hit so fast and hit hard, and you know, you just seen the just change family structures even, you know, and it was really hard. And but anyway, the, you know, they did a few investigations, and there was one where they I think they ended up arresting you know, 40 some people, and even a couple of officers within my department. And you know, it turned into a big news thing and stuff like that. And but one of the things that, like, even now with the heroin, so like one of the last seizures I was on, they'd gotten a bunch of heroin, and it, you know, it was tested, and it was this light brown heroin, and I had never, it was the first time I had seen this much, but they had tested it and stuff, and they can actually tell you where it came from, you know, where it was like where it was made or whatever, or where it came from. So the stuff we actually had came from the Fertile Crescent, you know, Iraq area. And what boggled my mind was, is like what I went home and thought about is like, how is this getting, you know, I could see, like with cocaine, it's a hemisphere away, you know, Colombia, a lot of the stuff that was showing up was some of the cartel stuff, you know, from Mexico, which comes from Colombia. But anyway, you know, I could see that, but at this some of this heroin and stuff is like, it's on the other side of the world, and we're at war with these countries. How is this getting all the way here? You know what I mean? And then finally something is done about it. And it, you know, and then even DEA, if you you know, talk to some of the agents, and I think they even got a website, but you can see some of the corridors, and they know where it's coming through and stuff. And but that's the thing too, and that's one of the reasons I got out of law enforcement was, you know, I had this real critical kind of traumatic incident in the winter of like 2011, I think, 2010, and I you know, it was getting to be, when I first got in law enforcement, it wasn't real violent. You might deal with something really violent or something, you know, every few months, but it was getting to be weekly. And it was the cocaine had what happened was they had this big indictment, and you know, made some even arrested a few cartel people and stuff. And but anyway, it drove the price of cocaine up, so it actually kind of dried up the market for cocaine in the area. But so you had all these addicts, and then it went to pills like oxys and Percocets and stuff. And with that, you would see people that came up from the cities or from other different areas sell these in these housing houses, and then they would you know, they'd run out, and then you'd get people, you know, like I handled a couple of hostage situations where people went back, there wasn't any drugs, and they were kind of irate about it, pulled guns, and so we had some standoff situations. But I almost shot this guy one night, come really, really close. I'm still, I'll knock on some wood, I'm still lucky it ended up the way it did. But that night I had gained weight in my career. I was getting older, I was getting slower. It wasn't as fun as it used to be, but that night when I got home, even when I take my gun out, when I get my shotgun, when you go to a gunfight, you grab your shotgun. That's how I trained my officers. That's how I got it. So when I get it out, I do like a quick 1 second, 2 seconds. I tell myself I'm gonna do what I got to do tonight to go home. Like if I got to go in there and kill everybody, I'm going home tonight. I'm gonna do what I got to do. But anyway, so everything ended up good. But when I got home that night, I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know how much longer I can be lucky. I haven't killed anybody, and I haven't gotten killed. But I've come so close both ways. So I was like, you know what, it's time to get out. I think I was 38 or 39. I always told myself between 40, 45, I was going to get out of it altogether. And so I figured it was time. But one of the things I learned in getting my degree and what I'd seen through my 18 years was that locking people up doesn't change the community. Working with the youth does. So in that 18 years, I seen the decline of language and culture to the point when I was your guys' age. If I stood on my front porch, I could hear Ojibwe being spoken at the next house over. You would hear and see cultural things going on, ceremonial things, cultural activities, to the point of the last fluent speaker died, I think 4 years ago, that lived across the road from me. And in the little area of Bequaquong where I grew up has actually quadrupled with houses, but there's no speakers there anymore. You see very few cultural things. And I really attributed to living a good life, living the way I do was because of the culture and language. So that's what I wanted to do with my second career, is I wanted to give that back. So that's when I made the decision to retire that fall. That spring, after that incident. That was that winter. And I applied for some Ojibwe teaching jobs, and I actually got one. And so 2 weeks before school started the next year, I resigned and retired from the police department, and been teaching ever since. So yeah, that's that. There's a lot of stories with the drug stuff. There's some of the guys I've talked to, like, I think it's gotten worse with the heroin now, and the meth and stuff. There's one buddy I ran into said he'd found a guy in the woods and narcaned him like 4 times, and he came back to life. And it's like, I think policing has changed also. It's not what it was when I was on the job. But Indian country, though, it's a different style of policing. It's a little more community policing aspect. There's the case law is different. And that's the hard part too, is when it comes to natives. And I've seen this with education also, where, natives got a real dark history with education, because of the boarding school era. Native schools are the only schools that have graveyards by them. No other school has those. So there's this dark history. And but you still got grandparents and stuff in the home that that don't trust law enforcement and don't trust educators. Like that is still there. And it sounds counterintuitive. You want the best things for your kid and stuff, but there's a piece of research out there that shows like that the way natives think of things is, the kind of the education and the criminal justice system are the long arms of the government holding the native down still. That's kind of the saying with it. There's a tattoo that you'll see on guys that get out of prison that actually get that tattoo and stuff, and that's what it represents. It's an eagle behind bars, and he's and the eagle's crying, but those bars represent that education system and the criminal justice system. And there's some of the things too where the federal jurisdiction on Indian country. So with the federal system, if it's a felony class level stuff, if it's not tribal, it goes federal. And at the federal system, you actually sit more time federally than you would stateside. Indians actually set a higher rate of incarceration than the normal non-native person on a state jurisdiction. You know what I mean? So it's yeah, there's a lot to it like that. We could go on and on about it, but yeah, I don't want to. Well, if we get into war stories, we'll be here all night. So I got lots of stories of things. And if either any of you guys are thinking of going into law enforcement, I always tell even my students, I get some good kids wanting to go into it, but if you do, make sure you really want to do it and get your degree before you go in, because then you can gain rank right away. But I would find something else to do with that. Law enforcement it's changed. It's really changed, even with everything going on. But I want to point out the difference between the Indian country officers versus state officers. There's a big difference in that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry your law enforcement career had to end like that. Also,
Yeah.
in Res Life, it mentioned that some people would only, like, you were one of the only officers that could get respect from people on the reservations, because the white officers, they just despised.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but I think I'm fulfilling my I've always wanted to make the community better, so I think I'm working in a career where I'm actually doing that a little better. But when you go into law enforcement, they say you find out who your friends are. You really do too. You find out who your real friends are. But when you retire, you find out who loves you. It's something else. So yeah, so hopefully none of you guys are thinking about going into law enforcement. I mean, I think you do a good job anyway, but just be careful if you do. Make sure that's really what you want.
Yeah. On that note, could you describe your Ojibwe culture class to us? Because we don't have anything even remotely like that around here.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So the culture class, I actually, what it's kind of come down to is even Native students that are on a reservation, like I was telling you, like the decline in language and culture, where you still have a handful of students that are growing up in families that use Ojibwe language, attend powwows, do traditional Ojibwe ceremonies and lifeways. But then you get a bulk of them that don't. Like a lot of my students come in are full-blooded Ojibwe, but don't know any language and don't know anything of the culture. So I'm kind of teaching that back to them. So kind of my goal, my underlying goal, my end question is, what is an Ojibwe? So I get them for 3 years. They got to get 2 years to graduate, but I get them. There's an advanced class I got, which is actually turning into a college credit class now. But I cover the language, give them the tools and the basis to keep learning through life, and then I try to teach them the basics of Ojibwe history. I use Anton's book, the Ojibwe Minnesota, as a history lesson, because it ends in language revitalization. And so that's kind of my goal, is to teach them what an Ojibwe is. It's a lot of stuff. So language, history, cultural components.
So like, what was your first experience like? What's your relationship with Anton and David Treuer?
All right. Anton is my Wang. He actually gave me my second Indian name, Ogimaagiizhig. And that's one I predominantly use in everything. Like I think in Res Life, we pointed that out, that use that Indian name. So how I met them is I knew them since I was a kid. Like I think they're a little bit older than me, but their dad taught at my high school. And I remember seeing them. I didn't know them, but I had met them and seen them. And then, through life into my law enforcement career, I decided to go back and get my degree. So in Indian country, you don't need a degree to be policing. They just send you to a Indian police academy at a federal law enforcement training center in Artesia, New Mexico. And so I went back, got my BS in criminal justice. And when I was there, I went to BSU, enrolled in classes, and then you had to have a minor. So I wanted to do a minor in business, because I figured, if I get out of law enforcement, I want to be able to do something, make money. But anyway, there's a bunch of math classes, so I didn't want to do that. But they had a Ojibwe program, and that was one of the things that I had seen as I was trying to use more Ojibwe with family and friends, because I was seeing this decline and stuff. And my grandma's cousin, when my grandma passed, my grandma's cousin Wasabikwe, kind of took over grandmother duties of my family. And so I was telling her about it. I say, I'm going to go, I'm going to school, get my degree, and stuff. And I would go to her just to exercise my Ojibwe language with her. And she was saying, Dr. Treuer, his Indian name's Wagush, means red fox, Wagush. So she says, Wagush, this, she goes, you know him? And I said, I know of him, I don't know him too well at the time. And says, go down, you should take those classes, it'll really help you out with your language and stuff. So that's what I went and did. And, I went and talked to him, and, it's not like it wasn't our first time meeting, but we had gotten pretty close after that with teaching. And when I made the switch into teaching from law enforcement, he was part of me helping me got licensure with my teaching credential for teaching Ojibwe language, Anton. And then Dave, Dave's always been around. He's a good friend of my brother and me. And and that was a lot of years ago. I mean, that was quite a while ago. So, I see Anton a lot more than I see Dave. Dave teaches down in California. So in the summers, he once a year, he'll make a big thing of ribs, and I'll go spend a day and evening at his house, and we'll visit. COVID, we didn't get to do it though. So last couple of years, but before that, so that's kind of my relationship with those guys. Help out with ceremony at the Meday Lodge and stuff with them, and two really good guys though, really, really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I guess going kind of back to like a culture thing, describe what like a culture shock was like after leaving the reservations and going to New Mexico for police training.
Oh yeah, well that wasn't too bad there, going to police training, because I went from being around all natives to being all around all natives.
Okay.
A culture shock came when I moved off the reservation to my current place in Bemidji. So I live in Bemidji, which is just kind of between between the Leech Lake and Red Lake reservations. So I bought a house off the reservation. I got, I have one native neighbor, the rest are non-native. But it's hard. Nobody lets their dogs run around. On a res, they do. On a res, you're kind of live where your family's at. So you don't have to worry about your house as much, because so-and-so next door, it's aunt, cousin, or whatever they are. But it's been hard. This is a good question, because I think I'm finally getting used to living off the reservation. Because I almost believe that it's like set up for you to stay on a reservation. It's like, it's hard to get used to not being on a res. Everything is set up for you. You can only access, certain things on the res and stuff, So that was kind of a shock. And then when I started teaching, even though I'm teaching on a reservation, and it's all Ojibwe community, when I get there, all the students are native, but all the staff isn't. There's 2 other native staff. So that was the biggest shock, because the jokes are different, the camaraderie is different. Expectations in the workplace it's different. Like, some of their jokes I don't find funny, and I'm sure some of mine don't. It was hard to get used to. It was really hard to get used to that at first. Like, it kind of bothered me. I didn't want to be offensive, but then I didn't want to be standoffish either. I wanted to get along with people, but I got enough history there now with people where I've gotten to know them and stuff, but yeah, that was the culture shock and it actually attributes to natives when they graduate from high school and they go to college. The dropout rate with college is horrendous. Like, there's not many students that go and after graduating get a college degree. And that's part of research shows that's one of the highest causes of that is the culture shock of going off the reservation,
Yep.
Yeah, so it's hard, because it's hard to describe, but I think that's what you coined it with the culture shock.
Yeah.
You know, it's just plain different, you know. Yeah, good question. Very good question, you guys.
Thank you.
For sure.
So you said you had to get used to not living on a reservation. What do you think was your biggest influence growing up, and how would you describe your childhood at Red Lake?
Very good, because when I left the foster homes, it was kind of hard being native, and then one of the things is like I was treated different and kind of, you know, pointed out that I was native, but I didn't know what a native was at the time. So when I got to Red Lake, it was kind of the home, like I was finally with natives, and that's where I learned language and you know, the cultural stuff, and it felt really good. So with the res life is pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of survival. You know, we were pretty broke on the res, so we hunted a lot, had big gardens and stuff, you know. And you know, and one of the things I learned, I think, was hard work, and that has really helped me through life, you know. But living on the res is it's a different way of living. There's different. It's hard to say, because there's like, you know, the poverty's high, so there's, you know, you know how, you know, like when commodities come out and different, you know, that's how fry bread was spawned, you know, out of the government assistance things and stuff. But the laws are a little bit different, you know, hunting and fishing and different things like that. One of the big things with me was living off the reservation is the dogs. You know, I'm so used to on a res, you know, the neighbor, you know, they got little, you know, dogs kind of run around freely. You know, on off the reservation, you can get in trouble for letting your dog run around the neighborhood. You know, and you know, some of that stuff of you know, just families living around families. You know, graveyards. You know, most families got a central burial ground right in their yards. You know, you go to some of the communities, you'll see graves right in front of at the houses and stuff. You know, you don't see that anywhere else, you know, and things. And but yeah, it's different. The community center, people get together for things. You know, one thing with funerals too, like when you have a funeral in the community, that kind of shuts the whole community down. You know, nobody does life ceremonies like namings and blessings and stuff like that. So yeah, and then you kind of notice that even with policing, what I noticed was some of the more traditional communities, like if you were doing something official capacity, like the community would actually help you. You know, and I don't think you see that. You might see it other places. I mean, I can't say that it doesn't happen anywhere else, because I was only in law enforcement on the reservation. But you get more community people helping you out, you know, in the more traditional communities. Yeah, it's kind of a there's a lot there too. I guess somewhere those are some of the things, you know. But then though too, like living off the reservation now for this long, I have gotten kind of used to it. You know, it's still. I think the other part, like even now, like the neighbors, like we don't interact very much. You know, it's more of a neighbor is a neighbor. You know, whereas on the res, it's kind of like your neighbors are usually relatives or usually close to you. You know, so you watch each other's house and help each other out. You know, things like that. You know. A little more like community, I guess, community based, you know. So that's the things I see, you know. And because I think off the reservation, a lot of families move around, and you know, it's kind of nothing for someone to have kids living in a different state. Whereas, you know, on the reservation, you're kind of, if you do leave, you can leave, but a lot of families will they'll put up another house near theirs, you know. So like I was saying, the little area I lived in quadrupled in size because a lot of people their kids put houses right close to them in their yard, you know. So you got a little more houses in a little area, you know. I hope I answered that all right.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks.
Perfect.
So I have one last question. What are your thoughts on like patriotism, and do you still feel free after like what's been done to Native American culture?
Yeah, and again, this is coming from me, so I might have like I always tell people this, I might have a different comment on this one. So the American flag is actually, to the Ojibwe people, traditionally, the American flag is actually a sacred item, and there's a prophecy in it. And if we get into that, it'll go even deeper. We could take another 2-hour discussion on that. But so anyway, and then so personally with me, on my native side, the side that I know pretty much, from the Civil War on down, I've had family in every conflict. My great grandpa's dad was in the Civil War, in Hatch's unit out of White Earth, Minnesota regiment, and in the Union Army. My great grandpa, he was in World War One. And these guys weren't even citizens yet. Indians didn't attain citizenship till like 1926. And then so World War One, my grandpa went to World War One. Somebody in our family still has his helmet that he brought back. In World War Two, there was 18 in my grandpa's family, and all the boys went to war. And back then, you stayed in until it was over. So my grandpa spent 8 years in the Army, came out as a captain. And my uncles, I had 3 uncles in Vietnam. And then when the Gulf conflict broke out, I just got out of high school, and I didn't go into the Army. I thought about it, but my uncles, after hearing all these stories about Vietnam and stuff, I wasn't gonna, and I was worried about the draft. And I told my uncle, like, he did 2 tours in Vietnam, and I was telling him, like, geez, I wonder if I should go, because everybody's been in conflict. And he says, no, our families earned their freedom. Don't feel bad about not going, and don't go if you don't have to, And he said the same thing, if you do try to get education before you go in, you'll go in as an officer. But so patriotic, like I'm very patriotic, I put my flag up and stuff. You get some natives that say, we fought against the American, the cavalries and stuff. But with my Ojibwe side, it's a whole different story with me. So I actually make sure 4th of July and stuff, I fly a flag all summer for my grandpa, my uncles, my great grandpa, and my great great grandpa, in the Union Army. So, and I heard all these stories all the way down from my grandpa of all these, war stories, and even my own family. I think some of the dysfunction now was because the high level of military service. They came back and were kind of messed up and became alcoholics and stuff. But they, I do live with that notion of when my uncle told me that, hey, our family earned our freedom, and not to feel bad about it, not serving. But then I go into law enforcement. But I take pride in that, and most Native families have a lot of veterans, and a lot of veterans, so there's and then even those were active service during wartime. But I got other uncles that didn't go to combat, and my sister and stuff. But so when it comes to, it depends what Native you talk to, but Natives take their service to the country very serious. And out of any racial ethnic people, Natives served at a higher rate than any other peoples in America did. So that's my part on that. So there's actually a prophecy behind the flag, and I fly a flag, and and that's in honor of my family. So I take it pretty serious. I try to make, if I see a flag touching the ground or not looking good, I'll tell people, like, hey man, put a new one up, and put that one away or something. But I take it serious, because even with the vaccines, like there's been this big thing of everybody should get vaccinated, and I'm on the point of, I think everybody should, but at the same time, I think that's our freedom. I think my uncles, my grandpa, my great, all of them guaranteed this freedom. If you don't want to take it, you shouldn't have to. So when it comes to patriotism, I'm there. So that's that, and I can only speak for myself and my family. I know other natives are I've heard some, and I try not to interrupt them. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, but I'm glad you asked that about mine. But that's mine with the Patriot.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you for answering.
Yeah.
And so I have a question about how you said that, like, the Native American culture is starting to dissolve, because in some places in the U.S., like how my neighbor is from Oklahoma, he said down there they actually have courses so you can learn like actual native language.
Yeah.
And he said that a lot of places don't do that, but Oklahoma is like the main one, because actually a lot of Native Americans live in Oklahoma and it spread their language, so like their culture doesn't die with how most cultures do over time.
Yeah. There's been a big initiative on that, where I think people were, Ojibwe speakers were seeing it for a while, but there's lots of stuff now. There's even like little chat groups on Facebook now where you can join up, and they'll have language tables and stuff. So there's more and more resources, more and more things that are counteracting that, but they're really recent. Like Rosetta Stone just put out in March, will offer a Ojibwe Rosetta Stone. So I'm thinking I'll probably use that for one of my classes, add it into the curriculum somehow. But that decline, and the thing about it is now is there's more official classes and people teaching it than ever. But at the same time, like it's just happened, and right now it's not like most kids. I don't even know if there's much families where they teach it in the home. Like it's like a course you got to take and then add it into the home or something. I've just recently, with my own brothers and cousins, have pushed them to use more language. So when we talk on the phone, I actually make them start. Then we'll speak some Ojibwe before we switch to English. So I think that's where it sits right now, as a personal preference. Like if you want to speak Ojibwe, you got to put some work into it. It's not just a given thing anymore. So that's pretty cool. I know Oklahoma. I've probably heard of some of the things there. Like even in Hawaii, they were down to like a few hundred speakers, and they actually brought it back, and it's the island's official language. So it's there's a lot of that going on, but I think it's still in its infancy also. But it's accessible now, where I'd say even 8 years ago, 5 years ago, it wasn't. You didn't have these. If you wanted to take a course, you had to like move to Minneapolis or somewhere, or to Bemidji, to a accredited college that offered it, and then learned it, westernized style of teaching. A good question.
I had one last. I had one last question, and I know we already touched upon like how we can help like kids my age, but like what is your biggest message to like just anyone about life and like your experiences in life? Like it can be on anything.
Yeah. All right. So that's kind of a good one, because I kind of contemplate this a lot, but just to I'll go back to this. It's the Ojibwe thinking of this is when humans were put here, and you hear this come up like when they give Indian names and they talk to young Ojibwe men before they go fast and stuff. But the Creator gave us simple instructions when He put human beings here, and He told us to respect all beings and all things. And then to quest for knowledge. It's like He said to gain experiences and knowledge. It's kind of like education. So with that, I think just living your life just that way, respect all beings and all things, and I think that creates a balance. And then, there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it, of discovering what your gift is, and that's it's a positive thing. And, and that's the thing too, is, with my age and stuff, some of my own, really talked about, like even anger. Like there was never a reason to really be angry. And, so that's what I try to do. I try not to be angry at all. And when I do, I, kind of back up and be careful what I say or what I do and stuff, but just to live a good life and be respectful of everything and everybody, including yourself. Very,
For
very good
sure.
question. Yeah.
I think that's like such a good viewpoint to have on life in general. It's just we should all get along and all that. So
Yeah. I think it's more, it's needed now more than ever,
Because I
absolutely.
had a question that kind of goes along with that. Is there a certain highly important value that you think all people should have, and has being brought up on reservations contributed to your answer?
Yes, because that what I'm thinking of is the seven sacred teachings. It's like love, humility, and all those different things, and truth, and if it's just a quick Google search, you can pull those up. But those are kind of the base. They say are the basis of living a good life, and those were when the Creator said that, He gave us these seven sacred teachings to live by. And so when I grew up on a reservation, those were kind of instilled for living a good life, and I really attribute me to living a good life and avoiding some of the bad things. Has been living those and striving to live by them and to check in with those. You know what I mean? And I teach my students about them. Also, I actually use it at the beginning of the year to kind of sets the stage for my disciplinary things. I don't do a lot of write-ups and stuff, but kind of check in with these seven sacred teachings to live by. And I think they can be for everybody. Everybody. I actually believe that those Ojibwe legends, when they talk about the first human beings, they actually say there was like one language. And now that I'm a language teacher, I was listening to these lectures, and there was a guy that said that he thinks all languages derive from one early language of human beings, and I think all races were present in that first family, that first beginning, when they talk about all those. So I really think it applies to everybody. That's a good question. Like with that, that's what I would strive everybody, native, non-native alike, to adopt those. Even with in some of my policing stuff, I've read some things, and even Sun Tzu comes up. I don't know if you guys know who Sun Tzu was, Art of War.
Yep.
And it depends the translation you get. Like a lot of different people have translated that, so you can get some differences. But Sun Tzu talks about, in his one things, he talks about a successful general must possess these 8 characteristics. And if you look at those are the 7 sacred teachings. He's just off by one. I think the Ojibwe version, they kind of combine bravery and one of them. But when you think of that as being a general, it's not being a general of a vast army. You're kind of the general of yourself, of your family, And so I think that's if you look at it through time, it's popped up not only in Ojibwe culture but other cultures of living a good life. So that was kind of hit me close there when Sun Tzu, when I read that, and I was like, holy man, that's the 7 sacred teachings he's talking about. So it's pretty cool stuff, you guys. You guys got me really thinking and sharing some of my own theory and philosophy, man. So.
Well, thank you so much for letting us talk and just ask you all these things. It means the world, and then I know it from the depths of my heart. It just means the world to me. So
all right, good, man. Yep, thanks you guys, and that was a good talk. So
yeah,
we should stay in touch, or let me know what you guys are doing later or something, or if I ever get down that way, I might message you or something on where to go and what to see and stuff. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was a very productive discussion, and I think I learned a lot from it.
All right,
Evan,
good.
Did you have one last question?
Oh yeah. In your last video, something about Vision Quest. I wanted to learn briefly what Vision Quest is, because that sounded
yes. Okay, so Vision Quest is it's called fasting, but mainstream society is called Vision Quest. So
okay.
What you do is you get put out so as young men, like from you there's this little thing you do at age 7. They say as men, our warrior teaching should start at age 7. And And so what that is they give you this little test once a year to at age 7, and by the time you're 9 or 10, you usually have pass it, and then you go on to do your vision quest. So it's one night out in the woods by yourself without eating or drinking. It's just a night. They take you out to a secluded location where there's no human. There's been no human activity or anything. So you're way deep out in the forest. You go without eating or drinking, and they actually give you some of the teachings we talked about. Older men, because older men teach young men how to be men. So out there, when you fast, you go without that, and cleaning your body of water and food and stuff like that, it enlightens you. And you'll get your spirit guides, what they call, for life. You might even get a vision of what your life is to be. And mine came true. I mean, it's really, you think it wouldn't be that, but and it's an extensive process. It's not just getting put out for one night, a night and a day. It's leading up to it. You got to do a lot of, you get a bunch of teachings, you get practiced up for it, you do some dry runs at it, and you ultimately do that. But it hones because we're all different. And one of the things is they teach you to identify what your gift is, like what you're good at, and that's what you're going to contribute to society. And it used to be what you'd contribute to the village, whatever that may be. So as men, we have to fast to gain our power. Women, it's kind of inherent once they get their moon time, or their ability to their menstrual cycle, they kind of got a power, already. With us as men, like you guys, you sophomores. So when I was a sophomore, I had already been I had been on like 3 or 4 vision quests, I think, and then you can go up in days, but the first one, you usually go up for a day and night, but then you can go up to 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 8 days. Those are like chief ones or boss ones. So, but that's what that entails. So it's a lot of getting teachings about life and stuff, and everything in life has come true with all those old guys passed on to me about how to be a man and a father, a husband, a grandpa. All that stuff has been true in everything that they said. And then they actually say that our communities are kind of in disarray right now is because we've lost those ways of doing those things, and say that our communities will become better when we get back to those ways of proving ourselves and learning about ourselves. That's good. I hope I answered that all right. People might answer it a different way, but I'm just talking from what it means to me and what I went through.
No, I think that was a good explanation of it.
Yeah.
And one more thing, you've written some books. Could you tell us some more about those?
Yeah. So both books I wrote, one is Ojibwe style moccasin game, and moccasin game is a whole nother issue. And that one, you can find that one on Amazon if you look it up. Ojibwe, I think you got to type in Ojibwe style moccasin game. That's a little booklet. Then I got a bird stories, a bird legends, all about birds, and that's available at Birch Bark Books in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Birch Bark Books, it's on their website. You can get that. So both of those books, when I became a Ojibwe teacher, it's kind of when you become a Ojibwe teacher, you got to create your own material. I get kind of envious. A couple of years ago, we got extra money to better our curriculums. So the Spanish teacher who's right next to me ordered a whole new Spanish curriculum. So when we got back to school the next year, she had all this stuff sitting there, lesson plans included. But I can't do that. I got to create my own stuff. So the bird book and the moccasin game book were actually study guides I created for my classroom. And then I decided to publish those and just share them with everybody. So that's what those 2 came out of. I'm actually currently writing one about my police career too. So we'll stay in contact. When I get that done, I'll have to I'll send you guys one.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it'll be good. You guys, it's been a good group, you guys.
Yeah. Thanks again for meeting with us.
Yeah, no problem. I gotta run to town and catch a store before it closes. So.
Oh, We
I'm
don't
good.
want to keep you waiting.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, you guys.
Thank you so much.
We'll
Have a good
stay in
one.
touch.
All right, be good, everybody. Stay in touch.
Will do.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Good night.